like to start, first of all, by saying thank you so much for agreeing to be Sarna's next interviewee. We'll begin, of course, by asking, who are you?
I'm Keith Hann. My formal title at Catalyst is, I had to look this up, Associate Developer, Play Design. But essentially, I'm the rules wonk, just the guy who does the rules stuff. Not all rules things. I mean, sometimes there's something specialist for something else that is handled by someone else, but broadly, I do the rule stuff.
Yeah, I've heard you described as the rules guru.
Yeah,
All right,
often, whatever you prefer. Yeah.
cool. So let's get your BattleTech bona fides. What is your BattleTech story? What got you into the game, and what keeps you playing?
Well, let's see. It's 1991. School's out for summer. I grew up in a very small, isolated mountain town in the middle of nowhere. So basically, all there was to do is to run around in the woods and play games. So, well, and copious amounts of underage drinking if you were
I've
inclined
heard
that
of
way. It
this.
was very isolated. But yeah, so a lot of games. We were playing mountains of like first ed D&D. I was running a Shadowrun campaign with first edition that I'd gotten the new book. I was very excited about this. I just picked up, new to me, anyways. Um, Listening to a boatload of 80s thrash metal, the new Guns N' Roses cassette single for the, stuff like that. Like all this sort of etched in my mind as this image. I can just instantly sort of reflect back to it. And we played a mountain of games. Like we tried Star Frontiers and a lot of Platinum stuff and all sorts of things. But so just one more game that came out that summer was someone had a copy of the second edition BattleTech box set. And as best as I can recall, I had a Marauder. I got head capped like turn two, and I was just kind of hooked for life. It was great. I loved it. It was like, oh, this is great. It was a lot of fun. I mean, a lot of games back then were much crueler to their player base. It was just sort of a given. Oh yeah, you miss a turn, you don't do anything. You're dead. Start over. You're dead. You're out of the game. Have fun watching everyone else play. So in that sense, the idea was like, oh, you're head capped. Who cares? Well, that was cool. Just play again. Play another round. So um, we didn't play a lot of that group, but I was hooked. So I spent my second ever paycheck when we finally went to the big city to entirely on BattleTech. Um, my dad was furious that I wasted all that money. Like, I don't care. It's way too awesome. I got to have all the giant robot stuff. So I got a lot of the really cool books that are very hard to find now that were in a lot of cases on clearance in the stores. Yeah, I was hooked ever since then. So even times when I wasn't playing, I would still read these books because I immediately found the lore incredibly fascinating, even when over and above the gameplay.
Right on. And so that's how you got into BattleTech, but how did you then go from just being a player to being the rules guru for Catalyst?
Well, back before social media fragmented into a thousand isolated hellscapes, things were much more concentrated. And I mean, there used to be a lot of different BattleTech forums, but there was always the big one, which was whatever the official forum was at the time. And when I got back into it, I took a break from around 2000 after FASA decided to fold up shop to about 2008. Came back in, joined the forums, and something that immediately struck me was that there were all of these books, all of these mech designs everywhere, all over the place. But there wasn't really a cohesive way of deciding in a game what you were going to get, what you could use for your faction, your timeline. So I started compiling all of this stuff, scouring all of the various canon references, trying to reconcile them, trying to take something vague like this is common. Well, what the hell does that mean? What's common for a mech? Stuff like that. I tried to make this system out of it. So I made these. Um, if you've ever played the old Warhammer Fantasy, there were two books, Realms of Chaos. Um, what was it? Lost in the Dam, Slaves of Darkness. They had D1000 mutation tables in them. So I was really struck by the idea of the D1000. So okay, I'm going to make a rat with D1000 in it. And it's going to have all, and that way that gives me enough design room to like go, okay, this is common, so it gets like 250 out of the 1000. But this thing is incredibly rare. It gets like five. Yeah, so I had this giant charts. I made all these rats. Um, and I started getting a little fan base around this of people talking about it, contributing their own fan projects. And eventually, someone from Catalyst contacted me, Joel Bancroft Connors. He's not really with the company anymore.
Mhm.
He was known as Welshman. He sent me mail saying, "Hey, we could use you because you did this thing and this thing." And I said, "Well, actually, that's fan work posted in my thread, but it's by someone else. It's actually by Joshua Franklin, the guy who does Alpha Strike now." I was like, "No, you actually want Joshua Franklin." I was like, "Oh, okay." And then like, "Well, what about this? This is really cool." I was like, "Yeah, well, that was actually also work by Joshua Franklin." Really, you shouldn't be talking to me. Go get Joshua Franklin. But they wound up hiring us both, so that worked out nicely,
All
anyways. My
right.
my first ever job was, what was it, like one of the old XTROs. I got a $10 paper check. It was pretty sweet.
Ooh.
Which I never cashed. I kept it. I'm sure that threw someone's accounting into madness somewhere, but so I still have it in my drawer of strange BattleTech oddities. Yeah. So, and from
Well,
there, that was the rest of it. I went into the mul team, eventually made head of errata, then assigned to the rules team, eventually became head of that. 2015, I was asked to head up the Battle Mech Manual project, and that's what really moved me into heavier sort of projects, whole books, and more prominent roles.
right on. We'll talk about some of those books later, as well as more rules stuff. But we have to get the all important question out of the way. What is your favorite mech?
Uh, I'd have to divide into two. I mean, for starting out playing 3025, it was always the Cyclops. I always
Okay.
liked that idea of, I mean, the lore for the original Max was so strong. Like, this is a piece of crap. This is really interesting. This was made to do this, but didn't do it all well, but is better at this. Like, they really worked in making it not just a collection of War Machine stats. So here is an extinct thing, or well, like no longer in production thing, sorry, that is meant to command. It's the sit back, direct the show sort of thing. That it really appealed to me. The sense that it's not the greatest of fighters for its weight, but it had such a clear role that made it interesting. It gave us also at the same time a sense of larger universe. I mean, now um, I got the chance to make the Giuliano for the modern era. And that's what I created, and the artist knocked it out of the park. The mini looks great. I love that thing, and I'll play it all the time whenever I can.
Right on. Uh, and well, you've got apparently one mech out of the way to be remade in plastic, or that's a new mech, so it's really not remade. But is there a mech maybe from the 3050s, 3058s that has not been remade in plastic, but you would love to see remade in plastic?
I actually don't care. like, um, like I have no idea what's been made in plastic, what hasn't. I know there's tons of it out there, but I mean, for me, I started in the early '90s and I was broke, and I always had more hobbies than money. So for me, it was like, okay, I could buy expensive minis, assuming I could find any in a hobby store, which was not easy until I moved to the big city. But um, I wanted to spend my music on CDs or books. And so I had very little money left over for lead, pewter. So instead, I bought standees. I got every copy of the old second edition box set I could. When I finally got my hands on the reinforcement boxes, I bought like two or three copies of reinforcement one or two of reinforcements two. I have mountains of those cardboard standees from those old boxes. And that's mostly what I still have, nicely organized. I've started getting the new minis because they're beautiful and
Mm,
they're affordable and they're easily to get now compared to the some of the days where distribution was harder. But
for sure.
yeah, I just don't track that for me. I've always liked the aesthetic for BattleTech is like whatever you got a gummy bear and the other guy's got a quarter. As long as the facings are marked, go at it. Like, yeah.
Would you really love to see a return of the cardboard standees?
Well, they tried, but I think there were some flaws in the implementation. Like the old ones were perfect rectangles. They folded up. They were clearly labeled. You could store them very easily. The new ones are a giant mishmash of, unfortunately, sort of like oddly cut, not stackable or easily implementable ones. But I mean, no. I mean, there's one thing. There's what I grew up with. There's what works for me. But realistically, we're in a new golden age of BattleTech, and that is far and away because of these new minis, because of this consistent scaling, the new art, the widespread distribution. People are buying into BattleTech in a way that they never would have before and wouldn't have without these new pieces. So while I like them and I can always think back fondly on them, their time's done.
Fair. All right, let's go to another question for you because you're the rules guru, of course. What's your favorite piece of rarely used equipment?
I actually had a hard time with this, but I think my brain kept going back to the chameleon light polarization system, the old exterminator cloaking device thing. And
Hmm.
again, that was thanks to the magic of the old books. When you could only get one book at a time, maybe one a year for my case, because we would only go to the city once a year to go to the bookstores. And um, so when I got my hands on that, and I would read all of these things 50 times, they're all falling apart on me. Um, and the lore attached to it, this again, this very specific niche role, much like the Cyclops, this thing is meant as a headhunter mech. It uses this needs now lost cloaking device to do so. All of it really appealed to me. And when it wasn't in the Battle Mech manual due to well sort of rules level issues, there's nothing wrong with it. Um, but it is always stuck with me all the same as something that's just appeals to me from a not just gameplay but an aesthetic sense.
Cool. Okay, now we have you working on pretty much every major source book, rule book since the 2010s, except for Ilkhan's Eyes Only and Dominions Divided. Which of your previous works are you most proud of?
Well, working on, I got to say first, is pretty relative. Like, I mean, I was part of the mul team. The mul team rapidly turned into the major fact checking team.
Hmm.
So a lot of stuff would just come through here and I would be part of fact check. And then later on, I probably grandfathered into a few books that I actually didn't really work on because I didn't contribute anything to the fact check sense. And then in other cases, I might have just done the rats, or I might have just done, okay, we need a very small rules section for the rest of this book, which has been written by someone else. So working on is, it can be all over the place. But I'd have to pick two, either the Battle Mech Manual, and just, I'm very proud of that book. I really like that book. It's been well received.
Hmm.
And I think it does what it's supposed to. There's always room for improvement. Part of me now working on the new core rule book is trying to improve even on that, which was an attempt to improve on Total Warfare. Um, the other one, not yet out, dying to have it out, desperate to see it out, is the Brush Wars book for
Ooh,
Operation Guerrero, which
okay.
has been in a development hell for many years. I finished it in like 2022, but I mean, there's nothing compared to say, I think Aaron, assistant line dev, who did one even older, it's also still been sitting. You know, the schedule is what the schedule is. Things fit or they don't, or they get bumped. So there's always enough writers. There's never enough art time, and especially enough layout time, and enough lead developer time. So there's things that get finished and then sit. And that one though, I mean, I got to treat it as a historical research piece, trying to untangle all the messy lore of Guerrero. There was a storytelling aspect. You're trying to write the story of all these individual conflicts. There was an actual full fiction piece, which I got to write. There were spotlights on various small units. I got to do those. So there's this whole section of the universe that I really got to make my own that is waiting. So that one, I'm pretty proud of it. Though. I like it. I like the result. Hopefully, people feel the same when it eventually appears.
I'm looking forward to that then. I didn't know that was coming, but Operation Guerrero and the subsequent Chaos March was
Yeah,
probably one of my favorite times in BattleTech universe. It's very similar to the current Hinterlands, except it's like all around Terra and just you get to just everybody kind of fighting over everything for any reason, and it's kind of cool. I think it's one of my favorite
yeah.
times.
It was. I mean, that was a Chaos March was obviously a big inspiration for the modern Hinterlands take. This whole idea of chaos reigns, what can happen. There's a lot of opportunity, not enough resources by anybody. It allows small scale players to do things. I mean, there was a realization, obviously, that um, there's meta plot and then there's gameplay. And meta plot is whole armies, whole nations, whole regiments, many regiments smashing around. But when you focus on that too much, you start to move away from what the player can do because the player's not like, okay, I move my third Crucis Lancers over here. Tune in next week for the movement phase to be completed. So we want to get this back to a player level. Brush Wars was excellent, or Chaos March was excellent for that, and so we're hoping to see more of a focus on the lower level to focus on the fact that it's a game played by individuals first and foremost.
Yeah. But speaking of this whole new rule book, um, let's talk about that because it's quite frankly very interesting because BattleTech has not been in active development, classic BattleTech, for quite some time. It has famously been very I'm not going to say entirely stuck because there is errata and there's been changes over the years, but very
Yeah.
few, and people. It has a reputation for being the game as it is, and it's always been. So let's get the obvious question out of the way. Why are we changing the rules now?
Well, I mean, why now? I don't know, the stars aligned. There's no special reason that I'm aware of. One of the things, I'm the rules guy. I'm not the business guy.
Yeah.
So why was something decided to be done now? I'm sure this was desired for a long time. But again, speaking of like brush wars, there's only so much resources. There's always something else that needs priority. The Kickstarters, especially, they really suck all the air out of the room.
Mm-hmm.
Everything. It's all hands on deck for that. Um, for good reasons. They're a lot of work and they're very important. But I'm sure that this is something that could have been done anytime in the last 5 to 10 years and should have been even. There's stuff that could have been done. I mean, when you start getting into 11 and now I think the 12th printing of Total Warfare coming up, you got to say each one with its own individual errata changes. If it was just a straight reprint, whatever, but we're not. We're changing it all the time. BattleTech's rules do change. Um, it's just this is ridiculous. We really should be stop pretending that someone who has the first printing and someone who's going to have the upcoming 12th printing are playing the same game, because in many ways they're not. The closer you are to mechs, the more stable it is. The further you move away from mechs, the more things get a little hinky.
Fair. So BattleTech has been around for a long time, as I mentioned. The core rules have remained mostly the same, but with those erratas and different additions. Is it a daunting task to kind of start tinkering with BattleTech's rules in a more substantial way that is being proposed with these current playtests? Which, by the way, I will link later to people who would like to get in on these playtests, and I'm sure we'll make sure to mention them near the end of this interview.
Yeah, God, yes, it's very, very daunting. That's something I think about all the time. It scares the hell out of me in some ways. And I don't want to be the guy. I don't make any decisions alone. First, let's be clear. I'm not just like, yeah, run wild, do what you want. Ray and Randall are just going to close their eyes and sign off on anything I do. It goes through all of the senior development, and the demo agents sound off. Other players, other CGL members sign off. But I'm the lead of it, so I don't want to be the guy who ruins BattleTech. I don't want that. So yes, daunting, very daunting. Um, I'm constantly trying to think, not just okay, is this a good rule, but as a subset of that, is it a rule people will like? Because even if I'm convinced 100%, look, you fools, this is a better rule. Like if no one likes it, no one likes it. It,
Yeah.
it sucks. Then it automatically becomes a bad rule. You have to have something that matches broadly the fan base's idea of what BattleTech is. And that's vague. It can be a moving target. There is no one. There's all sorts of people have different ideas of what BattleTech should be, but you can broadly say there's consensus on certain things, a little bit of movement at the edges. But so constantly trying to do something that not just works at the table, but works for the fan base. And as part of these play tests, we've seen stuff that like, well, yeah, this is fine, but I don't like it. And that's not contradictory. It's like it works, but to me, it doesn't match how I think BattleTech should be. So there's some things I'm probably going to back out solely on the basis of popularity contest type votes.
Fair. Well, for the next question, we have some questions from some of the people in the Sarna chat, Sarna Discord, as to what is the aim of these new rules. Now, I remember in some of your previous interviews, the goal is to replace the current Total Warfare and also the Battle Mech manual. Is that correct?
Yeah, both, yeah.
Okay, so is then the aim to have this under a single book, or is there going to still be two books? What is the goal here?
The goal, two steps. One is to make just a better rule book. We have errata. There's stuff that TW and the Battle Mech Manual are missing. There's things we've learned in the way of organization. Like we can just make a better book. But I mean, fine. That's simple enough. The other is that our core line is very, very messy. It is just it grew organically, and like a lot of organic things, It's looking back with the full benefit of hindsight, like, why is it like this? Well, that's because that's how it turned out at the time. That's how dev resources, time, people writing, it all came together. We can make a better line, and even the concept of what is core is could be worked on. For instance, BattleTech calls every rulebook core. I don't know why that was decided on. Pretty much every other game goes, okay, here's your rulebook, and here's a supplement.
Yeah.
The source book, or like fan base likes to call them splat books. Why not do that? By calling everything core, we've given a strange idea of how BattleTech is played. We've given a strange idea of what people need to buy, what to have to play the game. Uh, so we're going back to an idea of there's one core rulebook. This is what you need to play BattleTech at the heart of it. Now, there's no way that can be one book. It wasn't possible in Total Warfare's time because, then TAC Ops was already being planned and was going to come out. Tech Manual had to be broken off. It couldn't be done 20 years ago. It certainly can't be done now with TAC Ops out, with Interstellar Operations and all of the gear in there out. So you have to think of sitting back, knowing all of the material that we have, how can we make a holistic line out of it? Something that organizes all of these books into a way when people buy, like, okay, I get what I'm buying. I get whether or not I need this or not for my personal play purposes. So that's the other one. So a better rule book for at the table than TW and even BattleMech Manual, and the foundation of a better line for all of BattleTech's rules.
Sounds good. All right. You also indicated in previous email or previous interviews that you want to get classic BattleTech back into active development. Now, what does active development look like?
Well, I think for a lot of people, that would be like rearranging deck chairs in the Titanic kind of thing. I mean, which is to say, it's going to be very small stuff. It's just BattleTech's core mech rules have been so static, other than expansion via errata, interactions with new gear, that any change looks kind of radical. But if you're from the outside and you don't already play BattleTech, nothing here is going to make you want to play BattleTech. It's this is small stuff. But active development does mean being willing to look at something and going, um, well, could we change this one little thing? Do we really need this to work that way? Do we have to have alternate firing arcs being quite so punitive to mechs that want to shoot at multiple targets? Can we add an extra terrain or three into core? Small stuff like that. It'd be so tiny. So like if you think BattleTech is too crunchy or whatever else you don't like about it, this isn't an attempt to convince those people that they should play BattleTech. But it's more like people who actually play it already. Can we make that experience better for them? As of course we see it, some people will say, well, no, that's not what I want. This doesn't work. Don't change anything. It's perfect. But for instance, a good example is, and I'm sure we'll talk about this later, the ammo explosion changes.
Mm-hmm.
People have complained for decades about how ammo explosions work in BattleTech. At the same time, there's people who also say, no, it's fine. I like it. It's great. Everything explodes in a giant fireball. Well, I don't care. Yeah, sure. Machine. At most, you might get a reluctant confession out of them. Okay, maybe machine gun ammo shouldn't quite be so the most explosive component in the universe.
Yeah.
But beyond that, like, there's people who are completely happy with that. But there's enough people who are unhappy with how it works that we felt, yeah, okay, we can look at that small aspect and slightly change how it works. That's active development. It's just so I mean, I don't want it to sound like, well, yeah, we're going to throw out all critical hits or something and change everything to roll D30 or roll D2 or whatever. It's just about being willing to tinker a bit, carefully, slowly, with a lot of review.
Fair. I honestly think that the ammo explosions kind of came as like the playtest changes, which again we will talk about more in a second, came as a bit of a surprise because as you mentioned earlier, BattleTech seems to appeal to the guys who get headshot on the second turn, and it's like, okay, play again.
Yes,
that kind of catastrophe is part of the charm, I think.
some of it is, well, or I don't know how to put it. For some people, yeah, it's all of it, and it may seem contradictory that we might only want to somewhat mitigate ammo explosions. I mean, they still suck. If you actually play and you take 20 points of damage to internal structure, it's terrible. You're taking a lot of damage.
Yeah.
Uh, your mech's in a world of hurt. But um, for instance, yeah, we're not doing anything about head caps. It happens. Or the golden BB, oh, 3 crits, there goes my engine, or there goes my gyro, too bad.
Hmm.
Like, we don't want to get rid of that because, yeah, that is BattleTech. It was just that very specific mechanic and the way it annoys certain people. I would think my impression is the majority of the fan base was unhappy with how it worked. If we could give them a solution that would appeal to them. So we decided to look at that specifically. But something like your headshot and you're dead, the only way to really address that is to fundamentally change what BattleTech is, at least as I saw it. Like
Hmm.
anything you would do would be, well, let's give you a second chance, or let's remove that. And that just really didn't appeal to any of us. We weren't really interested in doing that. Um, I mean, I don't know. You could have maybe made it so that if you take a head hit to the cockpit, you take 3 automatic hits or something. I don't know. Yeah, I suppose if we were really interested in it, we could have done something, but we weren't. We're okay with BattleTech being harsher than a lot of modern games still.
Again, I think that's still part of the charm.
Yeah.
All right. So we are doing a playtest now, but I assume that there are other tools in your Rules Guru toolbox to tinker with these kinds of rules to see what exactly happens. Are there like a ton of spreadsheets, or do you have some basic computer programs that you can kind of run through when you're doing any of these proposed rules changes to see what happens to the wider game? Or do you, in fact, have a custom version of Megamech running with these new rules changes to play test them out internally? What's in your Rules Guru toolbox?
Smart people
Okay.
who are packed in very tightly into a small box and want to get out. No, no programs, no nothing, no spreadsheets in individual cases if made by individuals. But this was, I was put in charge of it, and I thought my approach was I created 2 separate teams of very experienced players. One of them being the entire official rules team, one of them being a bunch of players drawn in from forums and Discord and other things. Just people just conversational abilities I've been paying attention to. And I'm like, well, you seem to know what you're talking about. You're not hopelessly reactionary. You can see that things can be good, things can be bad, have give and take, are not obnoxious. Okay, you. Because you really do. There's some people that are brilliant, but also don't play well with others. And so you can't really use them because then they'll make your team fall apart.
Mhm.
So you got to get people who can work together with other people and be willing to tell no. So I created 2 teams completely in isolation from the other. So I wanted to avoid any sense of sort of groupthink. You can get really powerful personalities that come out and they can start dominating the conversation not through no fault of their own. That's just the way they are. So I create 2 groups. Neither of them gets to talk to each other or even know who they are. And I run all the proposals I had past each group in isolation, collect the feedback. Sometimes I would send each feedback from each team to the other, and they're like, these guys are idiots. But no, that's ridiculous. But that was the idea, right? To get this sense of multiple levels of critique, all these different angles, try to avoid a real sort of silo where everything is just crammed together. Everyone has the same idea or arrives at the same idea. Whereas with this, I found it very fruitful, a great way to get all sorts of different perspectives and to maximize the number that I get. So I put forward all the initial proposals I had, and I'd been collecting proposals since, what was it, like 2016, I think, or something. I knew there'd be a new edition eventually. So I just started writing them up. Like, man, when this happens, I want to be on the ground floor of this baby. So I wrote them all my explanations, all these changes and that. And then you're like, well, you're in charge. Oh, okay. I used all that stuff as the basis through the initial proposals. And then immediately, like about half of them were destroyed as soon as they got in front of other people, right? This is terrible. So we argued about things for weeks. If it held up to the argument, we started running limited playtest games, small pools, limited amount of time. So we're just this enough to see if it survives contact with the tabletop. And if it passed all of that, then it made the formal proposal list. But if it still seemed sketchy or radical, if I had the sense that there were a lot of unknown angles still, then isolated it for the public playtest list. Not everything goes on there. That was just the stuff because if we tried to test everything, no matter how small, we'd get too much data. I
Mhm.
really needed to limit it to something I could process myself. Some individual things were absolutely math hammered if the case warranted it. Like if we, like this really needs to be answered via a mathematical approach. We did that. But some stuff was just, I really tried to focus on play. I was constantly saying to people, like, look, we're not after realism. We're not after um, necessarily, how to put it here. I guess it was just a fundamental focus on the BattleTech as a game. It's like we can make the lore work within reason. Like there's some fundamental things you can't mess with, but if we need to, we can make this work for lore. Don't get bogged down by what a source book says on this, unless it's everywhere. You know, we're not changing. Heat is bad. We're not suddenly reversing that. Too foundational.
Mhm.
But this weapon is made here, uh, or mechs move like this. Well, isn't it possible that they could also move like this? Like a lot of BattleTech is abstracted, right? It's an attempt to simulate a separate world. So we said, if we can make it work within the rules of the universe as we understand it, it could work as a game piece. It's only as if it completely breaks the rules of the universe did we say no, that this isn't going to work at all. So yeah, that was our broad approach. Gameplay first.
I like it. Should always be gameplay first. Now, I know in previous interviews, again, you've said that one of the kind of golden rules with this playtest and these proposed rule changes is that there's not going to be any changes to mech record sheets.
Yeah.
But how much would you really like to be able to go into those kinds of fundamental like weight and crit values, for example, basic autocannons, so that maybe the AC2 and AC5 aren't completely garbage weapons?
Well, everyone would like to do that. I mean, I did actually. I ran a 10-year long campaign with some friends of mine. We played it at BattleTech with very, very limited accounting type stuff as a mercenary group. I used the hero system for the role playing game because we all were longtime Champions RPG players. We knew hero very well. And as part of that, I redid all of the weapons, and then I rewrote TR 3039. I laid it out and everything in Microsoft Word, which is not something I advise people use as a
No,
layout program,
never
but I
know.
got very good. I got very good. I'm a whiz at making Microsoft Word do stupid things it was never intended to do. Um, and yeah, I rewrote the whole TRO landscape format. I even found a freaking a landscape binder I had ordered from the States because it was really hard to find one of those. And you know, that was our mech Bible for the game, and it had all of the altered weapons I'd invented. So I redid all that. And it was fun. We played that for yeah, a good 10 years, and it was really enjoyable. But for the real world, for actual BattleTech, can't be done, right? We just
Mhm.
can't. Um, I was saying in another interview, there is no such thing formally as a new edition, like as a formal edition. Doesn't mean anything. Is this a new edition? Is it not? We don't. We say it's not. Others might say it is. I'm not going to argue with people, but our criteria for it being a new edition or not was: are we revamping the record sheets? Can we start playing with that? And we can't. So I'm looking at other avenues for those sort of weapons, which won't appear in this round of playtesting, but I have some concepts for the AC2 and AC5 that will, I hopefully fit in with the established lore and but make them work as give them alternate paths to play. They still suck as mech level weapons, but what else can they do? Why were they invented? Like why does the Vulcan have an AC2? Well, I think we can come up with a good reason for that.
I think it was specifically to shoot at infantry that were really far away.
Yeah, and but I mean, it's not really that good of a weapon
No.
for that kind of thing. But we could maybe do something along those lines, right? And that's why it's not here because we're looking at mech rules right now.
Mhm.
But so we can add rules to things that, as long as it doesn't appear on a record sheet, right? We can't change foundational values. And when the gear playtest comes out, and what is it now? 4 days or so.
Mhm.
Uh, my introduction for that goes into that. That the whole problem being with the foundational weapons is that they're essentially collections of record sheet values. You can't really do much with that. But in the same way that BattleTech's core mech rules haven't changed too much, but they've had a lot of stuff added to it, we can also look at some weapons and go, okay, we can't change that, but can we add something to it that only applies in certain circumstances? And that so it doesn't affect the record sheet, but gives us more to do with them.
This reminds me very much of the solution in the MechWarrior games to the autocannon problem. No, you can't change the weight or the crit, but you can change how fast it fires because that's not something
Yeah.
that's indicated in a turn-based board game.
Yeah. And I mean, they have a lot more freedom to play around with stuff like that.
Mhm.
I mean, if they can bloat all the values to get more granular and then start tinkering with stuff inside that. And I've always kind of envied them their ability to do that. But yeah, on our side, it's not open to us.
Fair. Okay, so we are doing playtests now, which are giving players the opportunity to get into some of these proposed rules changes. But I'm assuming there's going to be some rules changes that are just internally, everybody thinks these are a good idea. Externally, it's maybe been something that players have been asking for years. Are these changes something that are there going to be changes in these proposed new rule books that are not part of the playtest first? And are these some things that are going to be a surprise to players, or are they just basically things that have been recommended again for years?
Uh, hmm. I mean, if I just said yes, that'd be boring. But if I explained, it wouldn't be a surprise. Now, would it?
Fair.
How to put it here? Well, there's definitely a lot of items that aren't going to be in the playtest. But stuff. I mean, I mentioned that in the first two documents, the playtest packages. I mentioned off an aside, we're deleting the one heat for standing attempts. That was because who cares? Why is that there? You can
Yeah.
charge things, you can run up hills, you can run down hills, you can punch and kick, and you can do everything in movement, and it doesn't make extra heat. It's just this one thing, and it's 1 point. Who like it's totally pointless.
Yeah.
It's just, so we're getting rid of it. We don't really feel that needs to be tested. I think that will be fine. If I mean, some of these playtest changes leaked. I mean, a lot of people are like, "Oh, I didn't even realize that was a rule. I never use it," or "I always forgot about that." Stuff like that. And I don't think anyone will miss it. But again, that is also active development, right? Like that is a change. It's just not a very big one, but it saves us a line on the table and one more thing for people to remember. So. Um, Something that I'm actually excited about that's also currently not slated to be play tested, but just largely wrapping up a whole new set of environment and urban combat rules. Rewriting those from scratch because the old ones, I mean, the original city rules are from City Tech. They've largely, much like the rest of BattleTech, they've been expanded to cover more cases to the point now that skidding is how many thousands of words and pages of text just to cover skidding because every edition someone found there was more problems with it in terms of timing issues and things.
Mm-hmm.
And the building damage, where you have to track it on a per hex basis, and the damage to mechs inside the building is modified by the damage that has been dealt to the building. Like it's just it's incredibly crunchy. It worked great in Megamech. We would like to have something that people can play at the table. I always remember going to my first ever um, official game,
Mm-hmm.
like a demo agent hosted game, and then they had buildings on the map. I'm like, oh, are we using the building rules? And he just laughed at me. Like, are you mad? Nobody got time for that. No, we'd like to be done sometime in the next week. So it's not that they don't work, is that they don't really work well at the human scale. And this is a game played by humans, so maybe we should do something about that. So we've made a much simpler, easier to track, easier to just use rule set for urban warfare. I'm really happy with it. A lot of the weather and environment rules in TAC Ops in their current form, they just give you mountains of hit penalties, so no one can hit anything. They're not really a lot of fun, even though they do a decent job again at kind of simulating what might be a sense of weather. I mean, that's to go on the side. That's a good example of what I was talking about earlier with playtest changes. Um, and what you can conceive of as fitting in lore. You can conceive of the current weather rules in TAC Ops as fitting into the BattleTech lore, but they're not fun. And we can conceive of a completely different approach that gives the same sense of it's really windy or it's really foggy in a completely different sense that still works and still fits lore. So we're trying to make new weather rules on that don't just layer on the hit penalties, but actually give you a feel that you're in that environment without making you pray for death when the rules come out.
Fair enough. Okay. You mentioned just recently that the next thing coming out for the playtest is gear.
Yeah.
And there's going to be some specific changes to pieces of gear. I was wondering if you could maybe give us a preview of what gear are you looking to change and what might those changes be?
Well, this is a little awkward. How fast are you going to edit this?
Oh,
Because
you know what? There's no way
out
in
of
hell I'm
4
going
days.
to get this out in 4 days, so don't worry.
Yeah. So I mean, the preview will be like, okay, you've already read this.
Yeah.
So maybe I should talk instead about some broader ideas, or, I mean, by now, if you've seen this, you know that, for instance, we just got rid of jamming for the ultra autocannon. Well, there were a lot of suggestions. Everyone hates that rule. Everyone hates it. But there were a lot of suggestions along, like, why not just let it unjam like the rotary autocannon?
Mhm.
I just thought, well, we could, or we could be bolder. Like, autocannons are bad.
Yeah.
They're bad,
Nobody
like
wants an
unfairly
auto.
bad. They should be cool.
Yeah.
Like, so we can delete a bunch of rules text and make that a decent weapon. So we're just going to get rid of it. Forget it. Fire it all day. Have fun. Um, and that goes, I think, into the broader philosophy of the gear changes, where that a lot of the stuff we couldn't mess with because it's a collection of stats that can't be messed with because they appear on the record sheets. But there's a lot of stuff that has rules text that doesn't appear on the record sheet, and so we can mess with that all we want. So most of the stuff we're playing with is later technology because the foundational stuff is just stats.
Mhm.
But you look at something like the Ultra Autocannon. I mean, it's an old piece, but it does have game rules. Game rules are fair play, um, fair game. So we can mess around with that. Uh, that really then becomes our focus for all of the gear changes. How can we? Let's look at this big swath of rules text. First, is this a good weapon? Well, if it is, maybe the rules text is fine. Or maybe we can shorten a little, send off some edge cases or something, make it simpler. But if it works, it already works. But there's a lot of gear that is bad and requires text to make it bad. So it's not just sucky, but we've written a bunch of text to ensure that. And so maybe we can take away that text, making the weapon easier to use and the piece of equipment, and have less rules text along with it. So you see things like was it extended long range missiles is a good example.
Okay.
They both have an app. They're heavy as all hell. They have an enormous minimum range, and then they have this big chunk of extra game rules that, like, I think it is that they have half cluster size if you're within the minimum range that is already obscene. It's
Yeah.
like, well, why do we need that? This is already a bad weapon. We could get rid of the rules text, and I'm still not sure people are going to necessarily use it, but we don't need that. So there's a lot of stuff like that where we just I went through all of the gear that had game rules and tried to think about, can we play with this in a way that will make more people want to use this given piece of gear.
All right. Now, after gear will be the missions playtest, which I've been told is going to include a sort of mission generator rather than a campaign or scenario. What can you tell us about this mission generator that is being proposed for the missions playtest? Is it just going to be rolling dice to see what kind of mechs you face, or is there going to be more to it?
Well, yes and no. Not what kind of mechs. Like, I'm not putting in giant assignment tables or anything like
So
that.
no
It'll be up to you to
D1000s?
create your own force. Yeah, no. Sadly, I think that was mixed by. I think Ray might kill me if I tried that. Um, it's it's more like, okay. There's a lot of games. How to put this here? Games like BattleTech, they typically have, I would say, 3 kinds of gameplay. You get your campaign game, you get your pickup game, and you got your historical game. Now, your campaign game is something BattleTech has tried to do a lot. It is okay. We're playing a series of engagements that are linked together story wise and gameplay wise. So it's both lore and mechanics working together. There's a connectivity there. Pickup games are the complete opposite of that. No stakes. We're just you and me. Let's fight.
Hmm.
Done. And then historical can be a subset of either of those two, but it's the idea of focusing on the lore of the game. It's this specific unit in this specific place, this specific time. We're fighting maybe in this specific war. It's really focusing on the lore, using the lore to bring that match alive. It could still be just a pickup game, but it's like, well, we're playing out of one skirmish on Galtor, 30, 22 or whatever it was. Or we're doing a full historical campaign. BattleTech has done a lot of campaign stuff. It has not always worked because we keep, I mean, how many different mercenaries books were there back in the day, everyone with its own modified rule set. But we kept trying because people kept being interested in that. We've done tons of historical stuff. Historical stuff has been the absolute bread and butter of BattleTech. Just if you want to fight on X world, Y unit, 10, you can do all of that over and over. We have traditionally failed on the pickup angle. We just haven't paid much attention to it. Like Total Warfare has three very rough scenarios, as I recall, that let you do pickup games. But lets you and me fight. I don't know you from Adam. We both have a copy of the rule book. Set it down on the table. Let's blow each other up. That's foundational to a lot of games, and in some ways, it's really how BattleTech started. I mean, BattleTech always had lore, but it was in the end just a box set, some maps, some mechs we can shoot at each other. And there's still, I think, plenty of people who want to just be able to play a game, especially if you're new. You're like, we shouldn't be expecting new players to, okay, go download all this lore, figure it all out, master it all, because if you dare show up with the wrong striping on your pauldron of your mech here, like, you fool, that's the fall combat painting or paint scheme for the third Lancers in the fall of they'd have 30, 33, whatever. Like, I don't want to exaggerate too much. It's easy to get reductive, but the point is we should be encouraging BattleTech to be played as a game first and foremost in a simple fashion, not rules wise, but just, yeah, let's just start playing. I got the rule book. Let's just start playing it. And then from there, they like the mechanics. They appreciate BattleTech for what it is. They get more and more into it and can branch off into historical games, branch off into campaign games. But I feel over time we've lost a sense of just BattleTech as a way to blow each other up.
Hmm.
And so that's what this mission generator is focusing on. Get some maybe, I haven't started writing it yet besides the most basic introduction to it, sort of the setup. So I don't know, but I'm thinking like with a lot of games, here's your deployment zone. Here's the hazards on the table. Here's the weather, if any. Here's special rules. This fire starts on turn 5. And it just doesn't matter what you're bringing, which is why there wouldn't be assignment tables or whatever that. Bring what you want. But I just want to be able to go up with someone and because I've done this with a lot of other games. People I've met once or meeting for the first time there. Want to play this? Yeah, sure. We're at the game store. Want something to do? Flip to the mission generator. Here's what we're doing. Here's our objectives or whatever. Now we can just start playing. I'd like that for everybody in BattleTech. In core, right in the core rulebook.
I think that's important too. That's how are you supposed to get people into the game unless you have a really easy pickup game sort of rules for
Yeah.
that? Yeah.
I think we focused a lot on rules aspects, like how can we can we make certain aspects simpler? I mean, we have Alpha Strike as a way of, that's a good way of doing it from a rules perspective. We have battlefield support for assets to make certain elements, certain unit types simpler. We worked at revamping the rule books themselves. A game of armored combat rule book was heavily workshopped to try to make it easy to use. Battle Mech manual, entirely written around ease of use at the table. We've really focused on those things, and those are good things and necessary things. But we shouldn't ignore the fundamental set up a gameplay aspect, set up a game aspect.
Right on. And also, speaking of battlefield support, the other new thing that's going to be coming as a playtest, that at least has been announced, is aerospace. So will the battlefield support aerospace playtest rules be sort of like how they work in Alpha Strike? Because in Alpha Strike, you basically draw a line across the map. That's the path of the plane because it's going super fast. And it
Mm-hmm.
can hit whatever it wants along that path. And every mech that it tries to shoot can basically return fire for free. because it's in the air. There's no cover. You don't have to worry about
Yeah.
it. How will the aerospace playtest will work?
I would say more a different version of that. It's still heavily abstracted because it's a battlefield support. Battlefield support does abstraction, right?
Right.
The whole idea is you don't want this is for people who deliberately do not want the full rule set. I think it's really important to understand that when you think of what battlefield support is, there's people who are like, I hate this stuff. I don't want to use it. I want real units. And whenever I hear that, I always think, yes. That's mission complete, right? Because that's what they're designed to do. They're designed to exploit an entirely separate gameplay space. Uh, People who like the full rules will use the full rules, and that's perfect. They're not going anywhere. We are not getting rid of those. So, but there are people who are like, I kind of like the concept, but I just can't be bothered to do all the full rules aspects of it. So, if you could give me it in a simpler package, a quicker package, yeah, sure, I'd give it a try. So, we don't expect much overlap between these two groups of players. It would be similar to what you described for Alpha Strike. I don't have experience with the air support side of Alpha Strike, but obviously a little different because it's for classic BattleTech rather than Alpha Strike. But there is there'll be a dogfighting portion, which I guess based on your description wasn't really involved there. But in this, there'd be that would all happen off board. I'm sure there's.
I mean,
I'm
yeah,
sure there's.
there is a
there's radar
dogfighting
map, right?
thing, but it's essentially
Yeah.
just rolling dice, and you're just saying, I'm here and you're here, and you're just kind of pointing off into space because it's not
Yeah,
none of it's appearing on the
this would
board.
be similar. As I recall, they use the radar map.
Mhm.
So this would be similar. You've got you're off board. There's no point in putting you on the board when you're fighting in the air in no relation to the board. So you just kind of put them to the side. You can duke it out though still. If you go on the board to do ground support, you actually place a mini on the board. The idea was to make this a little much more concrete than the current battlefield support stuff for air, which is essentially just air flavored damage blobs. I
Yeah,
hit
okay.
you with an air strike, but it's 10 damage, whatever.
Right.
This is an attempt to get something more specific than that, but still nowhere near the full rule set that air has traditionally given us.
Will this aerospace playtest have any kind of portrayal of what is, I've been told, being worked on for a new aerospace game?
No, not at all. I
Okay.
mean, this would be a good example of saying, the rules guy, but I don't do all the rules. Aerospace was given to aerospace fanatics, of which I am not one. So, that's just never something I've really explored. So why not give it to someone who's got a lot of experience with that, really has a passion for it, wants to do it. So it will be revamped in some way, but I haven't even seen it. I'm not sure what it'll be. It's definitely not this. But in the same way that battlefield support, the asset rules for tanks, and the actual full classic tank rules, totally separate things and both exist. There'll be this, which will be in the core rulebook, and then there'll be a later, I don't know what form, aerospace product with full rules. And you can play that if you want to do the full rules experience for aerospace.
All right. So we are doing a bunch of playtests right now, and that means you're starting to get some data from everybody who's giving you all these feedback forms. What playtest so far has resulted in the wildest difference between what you expected and what actually happened?
I'm not really sure I had something like that because, I mean, the whole point of opening up to public playtesting was to get a mass of data. So, let's see. So there wouldn't be necessarily one surprise because I have to be very careful to take any one report with a grain of salt, right? Okay, this happened for you, and this person is really concerned about this. Or alternatively, like, this is the best. We had the greatest time. Everyone at the end stood up and clapped and pledged allegiance to me. Well, fabulous. Whatever. However it worked, it's still just one result. So I couldn't take great enthusiasm or great negativity um, in isolation. I would say the biggest surprises for me took place in the pre-public playtest phase, actually, the proposal stage, as I think of it, where we were throwing stuff at the wall, trying to get stuff to work, see what would work, what wasn't. when I sat down originally, starting to write up stuff in like 2016, how I want to do this, I had two things. Like, that's it. This is happening. No force on earth is going to stop me from doing this. We're going to see both of these things in the new core rulebook. It's just going to happen. And they were how BattleTech handles cluster allocation. If you have ever been forced to resolve an attack from an SRM carrier or something that has two LB-20Xs, you know the delightful joy that is our cluster allocation system. We're a game that says you should go to the hardware store and buy some fishing tackle to resolve one of our core mechanics optimally. I think it's terrible. It's just awful. And then critical hit transfer. And that was simply because, boy, am I tired of answering rules questions about how critical hits work. Like, again and again, we'd look at how, like, we made this handy, Ray put together this beautiful diagram in the BattleMech manual trying to illustrate the flow charts of like critical hit allocation. And it's like, that's a simplified form. And it's not simple. People get hung up on it all the time. We did our best to make it explainable. So both of those things, like, I think there are strong user cases for heavily revamping both of those things. You may have noticed neither of those things are in the public playtest.
Nope.
They're not changing at all in any way, shape, or form.
I see.
And this was a good example of what we're talking about by what is BattleTech? How much can you change with BattleTech? What does development mean for BattleTech? BattleTech has to still be BattleTech. It has to play the way you expect it to play. So no matter how annoyed I was with cluster allocation especially, or writing yet another rules answer in the forums for how to, yes, critical hit transfer does work like this. Or no, you missed this subclause 17B over here. We spent, I think, 2 weeks straight trying to hammer out a new cluster allocation system. Just 2 weeks of arguing, yelling, putting up proposals, alternate forms. The thing is, the rules in BattleTech for cluster allocation give you an amazingly interesting gameplay result at the table. Nothing, at least nothing we ever found, can duplicate that. There's all sorts of ways to make it simpler. But I mean, I told my playtesters and members of the teams, simplicity is a dirty word here. We're not just looking to simplify the game. Otherwise, we could just throw out half of it.
And then you just result in Alpha Strike.
or less, or even more stripped down. We could just flip a coin and say who wins. Like, there has to be reasoning behind simplicity. It's got to be simplification if it gets us better gameplay. It's otherwise you're putting the sort of cart before the horse. So we tried to get something that has that really interesting sense of crit seeking, the chance to get the head hits for the cockpit hits, all of that sort of stuff, and we just couldn't figure it out. So right after this, I swore a lot, and I went and I built my first box of Doom. I got to admit it. I can't figure it out, and I'm not willing to take away that core gameplay element of BattleTech without putting something in its place that gives the same results. So we're sticking with it. And same with critical hit transfer. We removed a variety of clauses from it in our early playtests and tried it, and then it turns out all of those exceptions, they're what I call load-bearing exceptions. They're there for a good reason, right? Like, you pull them out and you're like, oh, actually, this kind of sucks. Or, oh, I see why that's there. This is actually really unpleasant now, or unintuitive, or you can see why each one was added along the way. And so, nope, gotta stay. I'm just resigned. I rewrote the damage chapter a little more to try to tweak that, make it clear, but I've just resigned myself to another 5, 10, 15, whatever years of critical hit transfer answers.
Okay. Well, we appreciate your Sisyphean task. Let's start talking about the first playtest, which is ammo explosions and case changes. This is still relatively big, I think, because big booms are a part of BattleTech, and changing with those booms, I think, is kind of fundamental in a certain way. Now, what is going to be happening, and you can, again, anybody who's watching or reading this can go look into the playtest to see what's happening is that ammo explosions are going to be limited to not just the damage that would be represented by the remaining amount of ammunition in the bay, but would be limited to 20 damage for anybody who doesn't have case, 10 damage for mechs that do have case, and for case 2, I think it's like 1 damage or something.
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's same as how it works now in Tech Ops. Because it's designed to go in the head, you can't raise the cap
Right.
because you have to take 1 damage to set it off. If it was even 2, then that would still destroy the head. So it has to be 1. So case 2 is a little weird.
All right. But in general, this is going to result in smaller ammo explosions, but still not no ammo explosions. And there has been some notification in the playtest forums that these smaller booms seem to heavily favor larger mechs, because if an AC-20 bag explodes and you have like 3 tons, that's a big boom. But if it's only 20 damage, you're probably walking away from that. Whereas if your Locust ammo explodes, your Locust is still obliterated when it takes 20 internal damage. So are there any plans to address this advantage now that you've kind of seen that play out in the playtest for a future rules proposal?
Yeah, absolutely. We knew it was going to obliterate light mechs. We were just okay with it. Like when we originally just looked at it, like, oh, it caps at 35 tons. If you take a side torso ammo hit, you're dead automatically up to 35 tons. Like, well, that's a convenient break point. That's really nice. But we stopped, now after some playing, you're like, well, yeah, it's the tyranny of pretty numbers. It looks pretty. It looks nice on paper, but like, does it work on gameplay? And again, there's plenty of people saying, yeah, but I like light mechs, and I don't care how aesthetically pleasing where your damage cap goes off at. My light mech is dead. So, which is a totally fair point. So but yeah, we were being pretty crass to light mechs with just the idea of like, well, you're dead. Too bad. Again, that's back to that idea of we're okay with disaster. But as you put it accurately, disaster probably should be scaled a bit. Do we need, or like evenly applied is a better way of putting it. Do we really need to be rewarding assault mechs more than light mechs? Probably not. So we're looking at a variant that, like we picked 20 because it was a compromise value. It's something that had if you up it more, you delete even more light and medium mechs. If you lower it, then even more things survive and it feels even less important. So we thought that would be a good middle ground. But I think I don't think it quite works right. I do have an alternate proposal, which I don't want to go into here yet, but a variant that would hopefully work for everyone and penalizes everybody roughly equally, still feels bad, but isn't going to annihilate any mech. We'll see how it goes. It's difficult to introduce changes at this late stage. You want to make sure they're tested. Something I worry about is that we do testing, we realize something isn't working. Okay, now we have to do the alternate. We're pretty sure the alternate works, but we don't have the same chance to test it like we did the original. So I'm deathly afraid also of introducing some late alternates that turn out to fail in some other way that we only discover once it's hit print.
Fair. Okay, another thing that's coming with the survivability changes is a proposal to the side hit tables. Now, it's been a long time since I played classic BattleTech, but I believe this is to represent the fact that when you shoot at someone from the side, you're not necessarily going to hit them in their opposite side's arm or something like that. And it increases your odds of hitting a particular thing that you're shooting at when you're shooting at from the side. Am I right? I ask you.
Yeah, it's an idea. It's about encouraging flanking more. With the most fundamental aspects of old wargaming, I flank you. That's bad. You do not want to be flanked. So we thought it was something interesting that worked in both from an offensive perspective and a defensive perspective.
Yeah. Okay, but now the current proposal is to essentially use the standard hit table that removes the possibility of hitting the opposite side. So you use the standard hit table, you just take out the possibilities that should be impossible. So if you're shooting from the right, you can hit their right arm, you just can't hit their left arm, probably.
Yeah. Well, go ahead.
Okay. So what this essentially does is just increases the odds of hitting the things that you're shooting at by like doubling the chances of you hitting them, because if you're going to be shooting that impossible to hit arm, you're just re-rolling the dice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, I see some reports that this makes Inner Sphere XL engines exceptionally vulnerable under this proposed change because you're more likely to hit the right torso, you're more likely to kill the right torso, and that just kills your Inner Sphere XL mech.
Yeah.
Do you have any possible solutions to that? Are there going to be any tweaks to this based on the playtest results? Or will this vulnerability be entirely addressed by adjusting the battle value for Inner Sphere XL engines?
That was all stuff we considered. We didn't necessarily see it as it should be impossible to hit the other side because, I mean, if you're shooting at someone on the right side, they can have their arm out over there on the other side, and you can hit that. There was always ways. Yet another case of we could make this work in the lore in either way if we wanted to. What are we really trying to do gameplay wise is what we're focusing on. We just thought it would be. This was a proposal by, I believe, Bryn Bills, Rendell's son. And it was really interesting. Like the sense of, okay, we can actually get flanking into the game more. I mean, it kind of exists now, but because you can easily hit those other sides still, it's rarely as rewarding as you'd like it to be. Whereas here, if I can get on your side and you fail to deny that to me, I can be rewarded by this by pummeling a relatively small number of locations, and so I can concentrate my fire a lot more. But similarly, oh no, my right side is open. I want to guarantee that no one's hitting that right side. I'm moving, repositioning to try to get only my left side exposed. That was all the theory behind it. Now we knew XL engines would be in danger. We thought two things. One is that it tends to get you more speed, which should aid you in being able to reposition your side the way you want it. And two, we were prepared for a small battle value adjustment to make it so that those things gave you a bit more of a penalty to the fact that, yeah, you were more vulnerable. But I think what the playtests are showing is it's still too dangerous. All of that being said, all the tactical rewards, the possibilities of denial, it's not compensating, in my mind, for the ability to really just home in on someone and just work them hard from one side. So, yes, there are things we're looking at to work on that, tweak it a bit. Again, just like ammo explosions, too early to say at this point, but it is something we're absolutely aware of. And I'm personally convinced that in its current form, it's too dangerous and it needs to be altered. All of these things were tests. They were not, well, we've already decided on this and we're just going to do it. And let's put out a fig leaf there where people think they're having feedback and they're not. What would be the point? This is a lot of work. Yeah, we weren't sure about these things, or we felt pretty sure. I think it's more accurate to say we felt pretty sure about it. That's why we put them out there. But we knew there were things you could miss because if anything, doing rules for over 10 years has taught me for BattleTech is, oh man, there's things you miss. Like when we were doing the Battle Mech manual, I realized that the rules for jumping in water had never been made crystal clear. Like it's such a day one. The basic box set has water on its map and jump jets. But it never had been really fully properly written out. You kind of had to. There were certain things you just had to guess, and people just did. They just kind of worked it out their own way, but we hadn't gotten that. So similarly here, we thought this worked, but we knew there was a very decent chance we could be wrong. And as I didn't want to be the guy who ruined BattleTech, we better make sure we get that out there, hammer at it. The more players, the better. The more scenarios, more tables, more mech types. As much data as we can get, and the data has been really, really helpful. I love the playtest process. I've always been a big proponent in getting people in because no matter, maybe given enough time, you yourself, one person who knows the material really well and is willing to go over it and over and over it, can make it work. If you've got like 10 years, like I wrote my own sort of fantasy game just for fun. I like making games, whatever. Like it's not for sale or anything. It's just something to do. And I feel it took like a good 8 years or so to get into a stable state because I was the only one, other than a few friends I'm playing it with, testing it. You need all of those voices. You need all those perspectives, people who would do things you would never even remotely consider. And also, to a certain degree, just a weight of numbers. Okay, one guy says this, good or bad, like I said earlier, not really helpful. 50, 100. Okay, now I'm really starting to get a sense that this is absolutely a thing.
Fair. Uh, Speaking of people saying things are a thing, um,
Mhm.
one of the largest complaints I've ever heard of people who play classic BattleTech is pulse lasers and very jumpy mechs.
Mhm.
And uh, I can see it based on my knowledge of the rules. Yeah, that could probably be a terror. I think the Wraith is kind of a,
Yeah, yeah, that's
a
supposed to
min
jump.
maxy kind of mech. Yeah.
Yeah.
So speaking of battle value tweaks as well, what's going to happen to pulse lasers and very jumpy mechs, such as the Wraith with 7+ jump jets? How will
Mhm.
battle values be adjusted to address this long-standing meta issue?
Well, I've already rewritten battle value.
Okay.
Uh, I did that years ago as well. But it's been just sitting in, we realized it was not the kind of thing you just want to throw late in a I don't know, edition, whatever you want to call it, late in the life cycle of Total Warfare, right? It's we already have tech manual. We're not relaying out that book to put in a whole bunch of new battle value tweaks because all battle value appears in there. It's something that belongs with a new core rulebook and a new line. So it's been deliberately sitting around for quite a while, and that's fine. It's given us more time to play with it. Pulse lasers are easy. BV in its current form does not adequately value pluses to hit, and neither does it properly value penalties to hit. It just doesn't really take into account properly the 2d6 scale. So anything that's more accurate will go up in cost. Anything that's less accurate will become cheaper. So MRMs will be cheaper. Pulse lasers, especially the +2, any of the +2 variants will be significantly more expensive. So hopefully that helps there. Um, as specifically concern, let's see how to specifically concerning jumping, 7 jump, that's a little harder because you don't want to penalize guys who can just make 7 while running on the ground. That's
Mhm.
not broken. And it's also a common problem with battle value that people who have excessive speed through boosters like masks, superchargers, and stuff cost too much for their movement. So we got to find something that makes sure that just hits 7 jumping organically without penalizing, because it's all tied into a single thing called speed factor in the current battle value rules. So you have to be careful playing with that formula not to break other things. And we'll probably add another load bearing exception to make it work.
Okay.
Haven't That's the one thing I haven't done yet. I think I've It's a series of patches to the existing system rather than a whole new battle value system. So I call it battle value 2.5 rather than 3 because it won't be throw out all of your old expectations. Every value will probably change, but a lot of cases it might be by like 2 or 3 points, mostly like rounding error type stuff. It's mostly designed to hit the things that everybody knows are broken. Why is X too expensive? Almost everything is overcosted that goes wrong in battle value. This costs too much. This costs too much. There's only, I think, one thing I can think of that's really, or two things: pulse weapons and really low armor tend to be undervalue issues where they sorry, pulse weapons should be more. Mechs with very little armor should be less. Sorry, I got mixed up there.
Yeah.
But a lot of stuff is fairly straightforward. People have been talking about it for years and even decade more. Just everybody knows this is a problem. We can address that without having to throw out the whole system and hope we get every element of it right.
Fair enough.
New
Okay.
one.
Yeah. Um, Now, the biggest controversy with the mobility changes, which I've been following the forums, is the changes to leg destruction. Now, the current rules is you lose a leg, it's gone, you're falling over, you're a mess. But the
Yeah.
proposed rule changes actually seem to follow what occurs in the MechWarrior games. When your leg is destroyed, it's not essentially a mobility kill, it's just a huge inconvenience. Your leg has been rendered inoperable, but you can still kind of drag it along and make some progress towards where you need to go, and just other things become more difficult.
Mhm.
Um, but this also means that you're not going to have severed limbs. And I've known from other players that one of the things people really love to do is pick up severed limbs and bash other mechs with them. So if this change to your leg happens, what is there any also proposed changes to arm destruction. So if an arm is destroyed, it's just kind of limp by your side and not necessarily
No.
entirely severed. Uh, how are we dealing with these severed limbs so that we can still have a charger charging you with its own severed arm and possibly beating a locust to death?
I mean, I love that conceptually. I always ask though, like, have you ever actually done that? I mean, but like, how to put it? We think of something like the game of Armored Combat cover. That is just a great piece of art, right? And it's like
Mm-hmm.
Hans Stavian laying waste with a severed arm,
Yeah.
beating the crap out of a bunch of death commandos. It's cool. It's awesome. And because of that, that is actually the reason clubbing is still in the new core rulebook because it's something nobody really wants to do, but everyone loves conceptually. And it's such a strong conceptual element that I felt it has to stay. Doesn't matter if almost no one really does it. When if you talk to someone and say as a selling point, this is a game where you can take your opponent's severed arm and beat him to death with it. That I've heard that repeatedly as a selling element, and I agree. It's a good one. Then you actually play it and you're like, I'm not going to do this. It doesn't matter. You're in. You're hooked now. Um, Now, as for whether or not, so nothing's changing with arms because I didn't feel anything needed to change with arms. With legs, the changes are for specific reason. The idea that lying around, flopping on the ground, being unable to do anything, but technically still being alive and still in the game is kind of dull. If we can get you back up on the ground as an active participant, you can be put back down again. You can put up more shots. People can shoot you. It's more interesting gameplay wise than okay, you're the turtle on your back. Have fun there. Why isn't anyone helping you, Blade Runner style? It's not. I just don't think it's very interesting gameplay. And so that was the idea behind legs. We don't really need to do anything for arms. Arms work fine as they are. They can be blown off. They will stay exactly as they are. Now, legs might still be blown off. Well, actually, that whole thing might change anyways. Again, I'm still mulling playtest data over on that. But there is a vote currently underway in the playtest forums as to whether or not you want to still see legs being blown off so you can pick them up as clubs. I put a specific poll just for that in the playtest packet because there were some people absolutely complaining, like, I still want that. But I started writing it out and realized you've got two different versions of leg destroyed now. One, it's just like smashed to a useless thing dangling off your hip, but it's still kind of sort of there. And then actively outright surgically gone, blown away, whatever. Um, it's much cleaner to just have one version. So that was irking me. But at the same time, I didn't want to pull away too far from what people actually want. So that's what I put up that vote. I haven't checked on it lately. It's been about a week since I've last looked at the vote tallies, but I would do. I mean, I'm curious to see. Go and vote. If you have an opinion on this, go and vote. But that whole thing also might change based on people's preferences. There's, I think people broadly are okay with it being friendlier in terms of piloting skill rolls. I'm not sure people are as enthused about the concept of the leg that is destroyed, but still kind of there. I mean, for me, it's conceptually fairly straightforward, but that's what happens when you work inside of your own little silo and like, well, of course this makes sense. And then a bunch of other people get it like, I don't like this. Doesn't make sense to me. So if I may pull that back after consultation with some of the other devs here and change that to something else that works a little more as it did before. I think the more important part is to enable people to get back into the game. The movement point savings, the ability to have a lot of movement points while doing so, that's less important. It might be okay if it's just enough to say, if your leg is blown off, you can reliably still stand up again. You'll get knocked back down really fast, but you can get back up into the fight. Because the real problem we really had with all of that was just the flopping about. And you're like, let me know when it's my turn again so I can say I do nothing. Or like, oh, I prop fire. Is anything in my arc? No, okay, I do nothing.
Yeah,
It's it's really dull. So I think we could do better in that. But yeah, it remains to be seen. I'm still waiting all the playtest data.
fair. I'm very interested to see how that playtest data turns out because to me it seems very similar to the evolution of how MechWarrior worked. Because in MechWarrior 2, you lose a leg, that's it, you're face down in the dirt. you might as well quit because there's nothing you can do unless you have jump jets, which for some magical reason righted you and still allowed you to kind of hop along, which was part of the reason why I really love jump jets. But in that changed, I think in MechWarrior 4, to be what you proposed. The leg is there, but it doesn't work, so you're just really slow.
Yeah.
And it'd be interesting for me to see where the classic BattleTech players fall on that scale. All right. Now, this has been asked of me of Jason Hansa because I think he just always asks me about these particular rules. Are there going to be any rules changes for Quad Vs or Battle Armor?
Probably, but I mean, there's a reason we're just doing mechs. Like,
Okay.
BattleTech's an enormous game. You cannot redesign the entirety from scratch from the start and expect to, that's a Lovecraftian task to do it all in one go. This is, I'm pretty sure there's a Lovecraft story where the guy tries that and goes insane. I don't want to do that. It's not happening. So I have no idea because I haven't got there yet. Battle armor, off the top of my head, they seem fine. They seem to work pretty good. I don't think there's a lot of people having a huge number of complaints about them. There's probably ways you could simplify their various swarm attack stuff. There's a lot of swarming has a lot of rules text in Total Warfare. It just goes on and on and on. It might be better. It might be a better way of doing that. But overall, battle armor is cool. Battle armor works fine. Conventional infantry, I have a lot more problems with. I imagine they'll be heavily reworked. Quad Vs, I have no idea. Jason, you and 3 other people play them. Well, how would I know? We'll see when we get there, but that would be pretty far off, I imagine. But the main focus after this would be traditional combat vehicles, traditional infantry, the full rules aspects, because the new core rulebook will have asset forms of those. But then we want to make sure that the classic versions are done well. I think currently conventional infantry is far too fiddly for what it does. It's like, these are really terrible, and here's an ocean of rules to make them that way. And why am I rolling on 30 level clustered tables to to handle a platoon level attack? And so there's just too much for what they are. I think there was a feeling there that you wanted to start with the rules and then see what the results were. I'd rather start with the results for those, what people want out of infantry, and then try to make the rules fit that.
Fair. Now, we've all been talking about all this proposed rule book, but we still don't know what this new books would be called. So, do we have any names for what will be the replacement for Total Warfare? I'm suggesting Total Warfare.
The totalist warfare. Two warfare. Yeah, we could do that. No. I have a working title that I use. Again, not my department. I just handle rule stuff. So even the working title was proposed by Ray.
Okay.
For me, that's really not my concern. That'll be something, guys who've been naming books for 20, 25 years, they will handle that. Thank God. I just get to write the rules. I don't have to worry about it. So I'm not sure if they're going to stick with this interim one or move on to something else. I know there were there was like a really short-lived thread on the dev side of things, or like, can we come up with some fun names? But it kind of went away because people had more pressing things to do at the moment. But it will resurface, and we'll see what happens.
Okay. Can we know what the interim name is, or is it not something that can be broadcast?
No, I better not, just in case. I mean,
okay.
I can't see anything wrong with it, but I prefer not to assume and then find out through an angry email that, like, you fool, you weren't supposed to do that.
All right, fair enough. Okay, so that's the last of my for real questions. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about in terms of rules that I didn't get to?
No, I think you're gonna have a hard time editing all this as it is. I don't want to belabor the point. No, it's been interesting. It's been fun to have the chance to go over some of the more hidden perspectives on this that normally don't come out. So I appreciate the chance.
No worries. But of course, as I mentioned, nobody gets out of this without doing some fun questions, as I like to call them. So to first start off, this comes from part of the internal Sarna Discord. As head of the team that's updating classic BattleTech, if you could have a song that plays every time you walk into a project meeting or a leads team chat, what song would it be and why?
Well, I mean, for BattleTech, actually, I'd probably pick the one that for me is eternally in my head whenever I think of that summer, which would be Sabotage's The Dungeons Are Calling,
Ah,
which is
okay.
a great piece of obscure 80s shred that the guy was hosting us that summer. He was older than uh, a lot of the rest of us by about 4 or 5 years, so he had an incredible tape and CD collection. And Sabotage, that tape was being played all the time, so that stuck in my head. Whenever I hear it, I immediately start thinking BattleTech.
All right, perfect. Next up, if you could choose the title of the in-universe autobiography of any one canon character, who would be that character, and what would be the title?
Uh, Anastasius Faust. Terra, it's not that important. Though that one always kind of stuck in my head. That sense of you could tell that he's the victim in that, I believe, that Stackpole novel,
Mhm.
as to shifting canon. Where he's originally, oh no, Word of Blake has taken over Terra, and he's like, whatever. They free us up the difficulty of garrisoning it. It's not really a big loss for us. And then later they're like, oh, every factory in the inner sphere is on Terra. They make like 400 million mechs a year. They have everything, space yards. Like,
Yeah.
why would you do that? But the poor guy at the time is like, well, he got caught by a continuity theft. But when you look back at that, it's like, Terra, who cares? I always laugh at that. So
Yeah.
it would be funny to see a later, a yet another sort of continuity shift where Foch has to justify that decision in light of what we know now about. Did you not realize it had 1,000 factories? How would he explain that? That would be fun to me.
Mm. All right, and last one. If you could introduce any one kind of megafauna into the BattleTech universe, what would it be? Where would it live? And would you like to be canonized as the first person in BattleTech universe to tame one and use it as a mount?
Well, we already did this in that game we did. So actually, I wouldn't feel like I need to have one. I mean, maybe a Mothra. A Mothra would be cool, actually, off the top
Oh
of my
yeah.
head. But you've already got giant dinosaurs, and you can fight them with mechs. I
Mm-hmm.
was very happy with that. I'm like, okay, guys, here we're gonna do this. I had them crash land on Dinosaur World, and then they had to like punch out the T-Rexes while they were trying to repair their dropship. That was a fun game. So I had the chance to do that. Super T-Rexes, right? Enough they could do a little more mech scale damage. So
Nice.
that was fun. Yeah. Beyond that, I'll take Mothra.
All right. Okay, and that's everything I had. Thank you so much for doing an interview with Sarna. And
Yeah,
it
my
was a lot
pleasure.
of fun talking about classic BattleTech and your work and all the rules changes that are coming. And I hope everything goes well for you in the future playtests.
Oh God, me too. Yeah. All right.
All
Thanks
right.
very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.